What's up, guys? My name is Khan, and we're back today with more Railroads Online, joined by Heist. How's it going, dude?
I've been replaced today by Heist Cash, or maybe Johnny Heist.
Oh yeah, you're not feeling the greatest.
It got a little bit of sickness going on, and it's just made my voice a little bit baritone-y. But if you'll bear with me, I'm happy to be running some trains with Khan here today. So
we're gonna do something a little different. We've decided that the smelter cordwood situation is just awful, and we bought 9 more cordwood cars. I have $800 now, but we'll make a bunch, so it'll be okay. And we're gonna run a big cordwood train, but we're gonna run it with. I got a question on the last video talking about engines at the front versus the middle versus the back versus how do you decide where to put locomotives, how would they do it in the old days and modern days, and I figured it would be a good talking point for this episode. So we're going to run this train with one of the engines up front and then one in the middle, 9 cars in between both, and then I don't know anything about why we would do that, but
all right. Well, we can answer all of the different flavors of that to the best of my ability. Why don't you take the Glenbrook ahead, and Glenbrook can be on the head end, and then I'll be in the middle with the Mosca, so I have a chance at rendering the whole train at once, maybe? Probably
yeah, that's
not,
kind of what I thought, too. So I guess that kind of brings us into the first question. If you are going to run, obviously nowadays, diesel is power. They're all pretty much the same, right? So it's like, it doesn't really matter which one you put where. But if we were doing this kind of setup in the old days, and we had 2 different sized locomotives, how would you decide, like, where would you put the more powerful one? Where would you put the weaker one? If you're doing one in the middle, would you even do this? Is it more common to just double head?
Well, so I mean, it's all about a couple different factors here overall. It's about mitigating train forces, right? So the forces between the couplers, and it's about not crushing cars to death, basically, because in this early era, particularly like these cars that we have in Railroads Online, they're all made out of wood. The car frame structure is made out of, big white oak or whatever it was that the railroad used. That was a strong kind of hardy wood. And so, wood's only so strong, so you wouldn't want to squeeze the cars to death. So if you had one engine in the middle, with, a bunch of small little wood cars in between it and the next engine, and you put the really powerful engine in back, you're going to be really compressing the heck out of the cars between the 2 engines. And so you really needed to kind of balance the power and location of those locomotives.
So I guess that would be the reason to double head is if the train is so long that the weight of the train would break the coupler.
Yes,
You need to put an engine in between that can pull half the weight so that you're not putting that much stress on the... but then I guess the question is, you could also just run 2 trains theoretically instead of just one. Like
you could do second sections, which is another topic that we can get into in a minute. But before we do that, there's a second reason for a mid-train helper or a rear helper instead of just balancing the coupler forces. It's also balancing the weight distribution of the train, because there were many bridges built early in the railroad era that were designed for the locomotives such as these, like the Mosca and the Glenbrook, that were really lightweight. And then as the railroads got bigger and bigger power, they found that their bridges were really only rated for one engine. One common example of this is the Lobato trestle on the Cumbres and Toltec, which is the modern-day version of the Denver and Rio Grande, of course. Was only rated for one of the K36 locomotives at a time. So any train that...
flip the switch, sorry, I've just got to...
Oh, yeah. Yep, I'll stop shoving back here. Yeah. Any train that was heading up Cumbres Pass either would have to have the helper engine break off and run across light across the trestle, and then they would bring the rest of the train with the second engine and then couple back up, or they would put the train, if it needed to continue, like starting on the hill would be too much, they would put a mid-train helper in. And so most of the trains you saw run up Cumbres, you'd have the lead engine, then you'd have the mid-train helpers somewhere there, so that they would only end up with one of those engines on that bridge at the same time. So it's a boundary condition thing.
That's kind of actually, I never would have thought of that. That's actually kind of funny.
Right, so, because...
It makes total sense, but that's kind of a hilarious... So if your bridge is 1 kilometer long, you need your helpers at least a kilometer apart.
Right?
And
so
then,
it's
fine.
It's a pretty tall... Lobato's a pretty tall trestle. I think it's like 200 feet high, and I want to say it's about 500-600 feet long. So, you'd have to have a good 15, 20 cars between engines. But the thing is, that whole chunk of railroad's on a 4% grade, so if you had double header and you had to break the lead engine off and have the second engine bring it across,
you won't move.
They have to deal with the weight of the train, and it's flat for a little bit before the trestle, and the trestle's not too steep, so you have a chance at that, but really not that much of a chance. So they just put the mid-train helpers in back for the long trains in the Rio Grande era, and then they could just keep putting on the hill that way. But to the second section piece, that was a rule on many railroads was, okay, well, we have trains issued by timetable or by track warrant, depending on. And so the timetable says, okay, this freight train runs, it leaves this town, runs to this town, and this is the time it's supposed to occupy. And you'd end up with so many cars for it, and the receiver needed the cars, that you'd run 2 sections of the train. So you'd break the train in 2, you'd have 2 crews, 2 locomotives, everything, 2 separate trains, like if we put uncoupled between us. And then the lead train, at least in the Rio Grande, would wear green flags or green class lamps on the front end to say, hey, I'm the first of multiple sections, or there will be a section following me. I am not the only train that is on this timetable schedule.
What spacing would you need between sections? Because you're saying normally you're not allowed within 10 minutes of the same timetable, right?
So by special rule, they might allow for closer than 10 minutes, but usually they would keep to that 10 minutes. And, you'd get to the station and the station master would see green flags and know, okay, well, we don't have the track yet because this is not the whole train. There's a second train that is legally still the same train. It's just the second section of it.
Right. But it's all like a second, and you could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 section. Like it doesn't, as many as you wanted.
As many times you had a locomotive go by you with green flags, you knew there was still going to be one more section behind it.
Oh, so every locomotive would have to have green flags,
except the last one.
Except the last one.
The last one bringing up the rear. Yeah. So it's kind of a funny point. At the museum, we have class lamps on our engines, and they're handling class lamps that are really pretty. And they have kind of a rotary lens in them so that they can either be white to say that they're an extra train that's not on the timetable, or they can be green to say, hey, I'm the leading section, or there will be a section following me. And of course, people would be like, oh, we're running Polar Express, we're running Christmas trains. Green is a Christmas color, let's put it to green. And so you'd get the historically accurate people who'd get mad about the following section thing. But then you realize
not really.
it's
your track's only half a mile. You're your own.
We are the following section because we're going over the same track over and over and over again.
It's just infinite trade. It never ends. That's clearly So until you guys turn out the lights. I got it.
If we wanted to be realistic, we would continue running with the green class lamps until the last lap of the night. Then we'd turn the class lamps off, and then we'd be accurate.
And then to your last lap. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. See.
Yeah.
It's Polar Express. I get it.
So that's an option, right? So
people are just too much. They're too sticklers, They're too bent on these rules and stuff.
Right.
So you'd never have a red light though, like ever, like
on the head end. No, not on the head end. That's
would the last train have like a red light on the very back of it or something?
That's your marker lamps on the rear of the train, and I believe I'm not 100% certain because I've never run trains with sections, but I believe you'd still have the red marker lamps at the end of each section regardless, but because that legally has to be what denotes the end of the train. But I'm not sure if there was any other special designation on the rear of the last section. I'm not sure about that myself.
Here comes the comment section.
Yeah, Ferris Equus engineer, I know you're out there.
Yeah, someone will fill it in.
Yeah. So you ended up with mid-train helpers for some of that stuff, but if the train wasn't super uber long, you'd usually end up with just a helper on the rear, because having a helper in the middle means you have to do a lot of obnoxious switching.
Have a shover? Like you just have someone shoving the whole time?
All the way on the back, and that way it made it easier to break the helper off, rather than needing to go through and dig out this engine from the middle of the consist. If it was a really long train and you really had to balance the coupler forces, okay, you need some cars in tension behind you, some cars you're shoving and buff in front of you. But if you didn't need that, you could just have the engine on the rear, and then you'd just shove, and there you go.
How hard? Okay, so this is what I'm struggling to understand, right? Every coupler is going to have a little bit of play to it, right?
Yes.
A little bit, you'll feel the play, you'll feel the compression and tension of the whole train, right?
Yes.
If you're the head guy, you just got to give her. Like that's all. You're just give it full
if you're
throttle.
if you're running with multiple locomotives like this already, everyone's
like
balls
doesn't the
to
back
wall.
guy have like the biggest problem? Like how the heck does he control? Like if you're at the very back of a train, you'd always want the train cars directly in front of you to be in compression, but at some point in time they're going to switch to tension, right? There's going to be one car in the middle where like
there is
that crossover happens.
a floating region where you go from buff to tension. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So if you're the
that's
back guy, how do you feel that? How do you feel how much you have to push?
You are shoving for everything you have anyways. You're working the engine as you're just working it as hard as you can anyway. Yeah.
Oh, you just don't care. You just push, and you hope the cars can handle the compressive stresses, and that's the end of it.
And
so how do you control the speed of the whole train though? Like right now, I need a brake for the cordwood, but you could keep pushing through me. So how do I would radio you and be like, "Yo, bro, slow down." Like,
well, so they didn't have radios in this era. Both the engineers both the engineers would know what the railroad's doing. We would know.
We need to
okay,
go back. By the way, we overshot.
Okay, we're coming up to the summit of the pass. You know, we know that it's time to start backing off, and you're gonna have to make a stop, and then you know it's up to you to make the stop and get the spot. So yeah, it's definitely a neat thing.
We'll be back with these after these short messages brought to you by Cordwood Loading.
Cordwood Loading. It's no longer crane clicking simulator. It's now crane watching simulator. Yeah. Look at these gears. What drives these gears? Is there a motor? There is no motor.
No, I'm more impressed by what drives these gears is how strong is this wood deck? Because if you look underneath, that crane pillar, it doesn't go through.
Giant metal crane pillar is just screwed through these 1x6s. Yeah.
Yeah, 1x6. Yeah. With like a single nail on either side.
It's fine. It's fine. There's just it's fine. Yeah, it's
good.
It's fine. We'll see you guys once we've loaded this madness.
Yeah, great.
So that took forever, but we have 18 loaded cars at Cordwood.
We haven't even seen forever yet. Just wait until we have to unload, bro.
Oh god. Well, you ready up there, bud?
3 at a time. 3 at a time. Yeah. So how would this? I would just full send it, and then you would just full send it behind me, and
pretty much, yeah. I mean, we're gonna be going downhill for most of this, so it doesn't really need to be a double, like a 2-engine thing, but it'll be nice. I'll be a mid-train brake a little bit, which actually kind of nicely ties into the modern aspect of this, actually, if we want to talk about.
Yeah, well, I was literally just about to ask that. I was gonna say, okay, so like old school trains, thesis, summary, conclusion paragraph on every paper you've ever written in university, right?
Right.
Your conclusion is old school trains did it because of A, the locomotives needed to not pull the cars in half, or B, they were too short for the section of track and had to be longer, further apart to hold the weight on the track effectively.
Yeah, on the on trestles and things that needed. Yeah.
Okay, so that's our thesis conclusion for old school trains. Now, new school trains, new generation, new locomotives.
Right. So
horsepower is horsepower. Diesels, you just put diesels anywhere, basically.
Yeah. So we can MU, multiple unit locomotives together in big bricks, so we can have one engineer run as many diesels as we want in one spot, and then we can connect to distributed power, or DP, mid part of the train or all the way at the back of the train via radio. And there's a lot of fun nuances with that, and any of the engineers and conductors that are on Class 1 today that watch the show, I know many of you do, can probably explain the pains of distributed power more than I can, because I never had to deal with
radio transmission losses and stuff too.
Yeah, so you can really only have the DP so far back for one thing. So like the ideal thing
could you relay DPs though? Like could you have an engine to an engine to an engine to an engine? Like relay?
I think that's what they do for the really, really long trains. I'm not 100% certain, but really the operational nature kind of changes, because in the modern day we get standardized couplers thanks to the AAR, Association of American Railroads, or American Railroads, whatever it is. Standardize all that. We get stronger draft gear. We get cushioned draft gear that actually means that we can transmit forces more gently between cars. We get cars that are entirely made out of steel, and the cars become 80, 85 feet long instead of 30, 40, 50 feet long. So you're dealing with less joints and less forces and things, and we get roller bearings.
And they're on smoother bearings, so
exactly.
they're gonna go like, yeah.
So we get less forces, so we can usually live with having the distributed power all the way at the back. And so what I usually saw on the mountain subs in BNSF out of Seattle is that they would try and take trains up the hill with, they would call it like a 2x1 or a 2x2. So you'd have 2 at the front, 1 at the back, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, is how they would denote it.
Now, when you have 2 engines connected together, they're connected with an actual cable. Derail Valley taught me that.
Yes, and that's actually how it works. And there's more cables than just what Derail Valley shows. There is one.
Okay.
There is one cable for all of the electrical. There is the brake pipe, which is what every car already has, and then there are 3 MU hoses. One for your main reservoir, one for your independent brake, and then one for the independent actuating. Or maybe one's brake cylinder.
Wait,
God, it's been so long. But anyway.
If you have 2 engines, though, connected, and then you have 2 at the back connected via radio, but they'd be connected to each other as well with all their hoses and
Correct.
stuff. So they would behave as one unit, even though they're 2 units. But who charges the brake line? Do both compressors work together to charge the brake line?
So here comes the very neat distinction between old and new. And one of the reasons why you end up with a mid-train DP, depending on weather and depending on how long the train is. So on old school trains, with the old school brake valves we have on the steam engines, only one engine can supply the train with air. So when you're double heading, only the one engine can supply the train with air, because the brake valve is a simple valve that is sending the main reservoir to the brake pipe through a feed valve based on what your brake valve is doing. Right. And so if you have both locomotives supplying it, whether it's a mid-train helper or a lead engine or whatever, when one engine goes to try and reduce the brake pipe pressure, the other train overrides it because it's still sending that main res pressure. Right? So you can't do that. So one engine has to be cut out. So you're relying on the compressor on one locomotive. And it was kind of hilarious. I didn't realize this until we ran the RGS 20 with the RGS 455, quote unquote, which is the 463 masquerading for a charter.
I'm gonna run ahead while you just, because I gotta set that one.
Yeah,
switch.
You set the switches and all monologue.
If you just slow down just a little bit.
Just give me a little break. Yep.
Yeah, my engine's off, no brake. It's just you're shoving the whole thing.
I'm braking pretty hard, so we'll slow down.
Yeah, I should be okay. I'll cut the corner here. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking when we were getting out to go do operations with the train, I was like, oh, it's going to be nice that we have the second engine, because it's got a big cross compound air compressor that's dual stage. Reuses the steam to get more air out of it. It's more efficient, versus 20 having one single stage 11-inch pump. It's like, oh, it's going to be nice. The 20 is not going to have a huge workout with the air pump. And it'll have the 455 helping it out. And then all day, I'm just listening to this one poor 11-inch pump charge up this 15-car train. Bam, 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 bam. Like the whole time. And it's like, oh,
the other one's
not doing. I mean, it's cycling here and there to maintain the main res on the 455, but that was it. And it's like, oh, it can't, because it's cut out. It's not supplying its main res to the train. That's no longer the case.
When they cut it out, there's an isolation valve then, where it taps the pipe basically.
They call it the double heading cock, or the double heading cutout valve. Yeah.
But then because the engine itself, like the locomotive, has its own air brakes, but those air brakes are now controlled by the compressor from the other locomotive. Like it's all
right. So are
those brakes run independently from its own compressor? Like, is it like the locomotive is now part of the whole train's brake line rather than its own brake line?
So
right?
It depends. It depends on a couple different things. And 1 second. Okay. It depends on a couple of different things, because that's my answer always, every time, for everything anymore.
Always depends.
Everything always depends. So most steam locomotives got set up in such a way that they could be actuated like a car by reduction of brake pipe. They need a couple extra things for that to work, and some engines didn't get that, but most engines ended up getting that. So that if you cut out the automatic brake valve with the double heading cock, a reduction in the brake pipe will cause the locomotive's independent brake to set up like it's a freight car, and so and it would just do whatever it does. So lead engine takes a set.
you'll still have a whole crew running that other locomotive, even though its brakes are controlled by the other locomotive.
Precisely, yeah. So as the second engine on a double header or as a mid-train helper, you really don't touch the brake valves at all. Like
you just leave your brake valve open.
You just sit there and ride.
and shovel fire and give it power.
Yeah,
basically.
give it power when it needs it, and if you're drifting, like right now, I would be putting my Johnson bar in the corner to make sure it's lubricating the whole surface and evenly wearing across the whole slide valve.
Right,
and
I'm not giving it power anymore either. I'd
be kicking my feet up as you're controlling the air, but because we don't have air brakes, I'm going to give you a little assistance on the brakes back here too.
So basically, right now, my Johnson bar, I'd want to put it to
all
0?
the way forward, because you want it to wear evenly, and if you have it at 0, it's only traversing a little small amount of the surface. So you're wearing more in the middle.
Across the entire piston, even though it's not providing power.
Yes, you want it to go all the way across, and that way you're wearing down everything as evenly as you can. And that's kind of the best practice, so that you don't end up with a dish right in the middle of the travel.
Yeah, I know. We get a lot of people in the comments. They complain that we don't use the Johnson bars correctly.
Well, it doesn't work correctly.
And I'm
like,
guys, it doesn't. It's literally 100% or a 0 bar.
If it did anything else, like if it was properly simulated, I would be happy and I would be giddy to use it. But it's just a pile of junk right now. So it's like leave the stick in full, and then
you
whatever.
Just go forward, you go backwards, and that's all you do. So.
Yeah. So anyway, modern trains, because we have more modern air brakes and we can connect everything up.
Though?
Or no. So every locomotive ties in your MU consist. You tie all of your main reservoirs together in all the locomotives that are piled up. So if you have 4 locomotives together, all 4 of those locomotives can charge up and pump air. And because your distributed power, you can talk to and can control its brake valves remotely, you can have, when you're in release, you can have your distributed power help charge up the train, which is necessary in many locations, because when it's so cold out and you're in Minnesota or the Midwest, etc., everything starts to leak more. Your gaskets and your glad hands, they shrink, that leaks. You're dealing with all this crazy leakage, and you need to kind of keep the train pumped up within a certain value to be able to run it. And sometimes the trains are so long that you can't make
the air bleeds out before it pressurizes the pipe.
Yeah, it literally bleeds out before it. The FRA requires
what kind of head losses do they get through train couplings? Because they're like, I've seen brake hoses before. They're like a 90-degree couple, so you'd lose like the rule of thumb I've always been taught in engineering is for every 90 degree that you have to move in the pipe, you lose 3 feet of pipe. So it's like if you're doing like a 90-degree couple, like my pool pump, for example, has 3 90 degrees coming off the pump, which means it's pumping through the head pressure of 10 feet of pipe, even though it's only
just
3
because
90s
it's 90s, yeah.
Because they're 90s, yeah.
Well, so it's a little different because we're talking about air as a gas versus a liquid, right? Which means it's flowing a little bit easier, and they're not actually 90s, they're 45s. For the angle cock. So it's a little bit smoother, but that still applies, and there's still guts of valve in there that they have to flow around. So they're actually there's more things to it, but
so there is a head loss then between every
there is kind of a you do get to a point based on weather and seals and car maintenance and all this stuff where you get to it as far as the air will go, quote unquote. But the FRA doesn't let you run if you have a certain difference in air pressure from the head end to the tail end. I've never run into dealing with that because I don't think the rules that apply to our tourist railroads are necessarily the same as the Class 1, and I've not had to build Class 1 trains and whatever.
Well, and your trains aren't 6,000 feet long either.
Yeah, our trains are 6 cars long, not 16,000 feet long.
Like you've got got 6 couples to deal with, and
still we get illegal leakage sometimes, and we have to replace gaskets when it's so cold out. Like it's kind of incredible. So with the modern stuff, like
tape. I heard duct tape is great. Just wrap it with some duct tape.
Sure, why not?
That'll work, right? That's not sketchy.
So I want to say that the rule is you have to keep the brake pipe within 15 pounds head to end. Right. So if you have 90 at the head end, you have to have 75 at the rear. And that's at least what some of the tourist railroads do with the old school air. The Class 1 guys, I'm sure you guys can fill me in on the exact ruling. But the point is you have to have some proportion of the brake pipe all the way the same, or within a certain range. And you run out of that. So you can add a distributed power locomotive at that point, and then it can help charge that up so that your minimum point is halfway between the locomotives at the front and your distributed power. So a lot of times you end up cutting in a mid-train helper to deal with the air losses. And that is a reality of railroading when it's super cold out and you're running really long trains.
So neat.
They also sometimes will put a distributed power engine in partway in to help with switching. Like if you've got to set out like 50 cars at an industry and it's on the way, okay, we'll put the distributed power ahead of the 50 cars so that you don't have to do a bunch of switching to set them out, and then you end up with a rear pusher instead, just depending on.
You're on your own currently, just letting you know. My brake's off.
Okay.
I'm at 0 rag.
We're just rolling.
The coal cars are in the way, so I'm moving them.
Oh, what in the...
Oh, sick. I crashed the game apparently by getting out of a car.
Oh my god, Con.
Good thing I saved.
Oh my, yeah. Oh, you crashed. Oh, you're gone.
Oh, yeah, I hard crashed. I'm on desktop.
Oh my god, yeah. No, that was the most entertaining wreck, quote unquote. My tender just yeeted into the sky. Like it was gone.
Awesome.
Like all of a sudden, like I really had to stop myself from swearing because that was just like we weren't going fast at all. It was not 39 cars. I did not have it in notch 8, and that tender just yeeted into the stratosphere, and everything went on the ground. Literally everything. Yeah, so nothing happened. Nothing happened.
No,
the train did not blow up everywhere. Just pretend like I did not
like a glitch in the Matrix. And
run this twice.
We all just,
it's fine.
Yeah. Where are you?
There's hoppers over there. That's neat.
Oh yeah, I moved those. I ran ahead of the train on my horse, and came to got the class 48.
That's a vibe.
I'm just waiting to get back onto the train. I forgot what we were talking about because it's been literally like a half hour.
It has been because we had to reload and run back from the. Well, thankfully we were loaded.
Thankfully I saved after
that
we
would have been so much pain. That would have been all of the pain.
I'm gonna save again now that you're here.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea because stuff happens. It's fine.
All right,
we're coming into the passing track now. I think. I mean, I'm running from the Mosca still. So
yeah, no, you're good. We're the passing track. How would we? I guess we would technically. We should have had our helper way up. Like the class 48 should have been at the head shunt, but we wouldn't be able to break the train in half. That looked spicy.
Yeah, that one car was doing a bit of a dance.
Yeah, that one car looked like it wanted to, derail. So
a little string line action.
No big deal.
That's what happens when the mid-train helper is doing all the work, apparently.
Oh, don't worry. I'll crank her up into full speed. Here we go. I'm pulling now.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna get out and let you. I'm gonna let you spot it while I get the switch.
Okay, perfect.
You've got 3 cars, 2 cars.
I'm already on the brake.
1 car. That'll do.
So our shunt line here, our lead-off siding, I don't know, our track that goes, it's about 20 cars long. I'm right at the end of it right now. Yeah,
we could fit another maybe 4 cars between it and point a switch.
Yeah, I'm on the switch now trying to go full reverse, and she ain't, okay, we're stopped finally. There we go.
All right. I'm going to line us into the yard here, and we're gonna have to break this train up. I'm not sure exactly what we're gonna do with it yet.
I don't know. Yeah, we just got to get into the yard first, and then the class 48's there, so you can use the class 48 to pull 3 cars off at a time.
Oh, okay, that'll be good. Just knuckle it into the 48 and.
Yeah, and then let the 48 just pull the back 3, shunt, and then move them over a lane, right, and then repeat.
Okay, so we'll break the train in half. We'll put 1 on one lane, 1 on another lane.
Yeah,
that should fit. That should work.
I'm just coasting now, so.
Okay, I'm running back to the train.
And then we can honestly assemble all the empties up together into one long train of empties.
For sure.
And then just, drag that all back up ourselves.
Yeah, it should be pretty simple.
We'll have to flip the locomotives around. And we can just, we don't even really need to double head it back. One of us can just run ahead.
Presumably, yeah, it should, empties.
Yeah.
On the 2%, 18 empties.
The Mosca should do it.
It should be fine. Probably.
Yeah.
He said, not doing
we'll double head. We'll sit in front anyway, just in case. But I feel like the Mosca can do it on its own.
Probably. All right, I've cut off, and I'm going to back up past a little bit, and then get the switch.
Gotcha. I'm just still posting now.
Hopefully I don't just dunk into the Class 48 super hard. So I can barely see the end of my train. It's fine. Pilot wheel just randomly derailing. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We're going in reverse. It's not helping us anyways. If the Class 48 could render, that would be
It's
cool.
right at the like log firewood thing.
Okay, so I'm getting really close to it. There it is. Dunk. Got it. Alright, you can keep coming back. We got decent enough separation. It'll work.
Yeah, I'm just gonna wait until you're past and flip the switch to the next lane.
Sure.
Because I think you can go through that lane, I'll go into the second lane, and then we reassemble empties and push them out this way, right?
Right. Perfect.
So I just flick this
Yeah,
guy.
I guess. So I'll spot here. We'll use the Class 48. And then you can spin the engines around while I'm dumping stuff,
pretty much.
I guess. I have
make sure you join my company.
Yeah, $189. Let me join your
Yeah, I have
company right
800
now.
bucks, so just make sure you join
I'm
up
now
with my
employed
company.
by Con. When's my
Yep.
first paycheck?
You don't get a paycheck, sir.
Oh.
All the money goes into the We Need More Locomotives Fund.
Oh, that's reasonable. More trains is good. More trains is happy brain chemicals.
Unfortunately, there's a fund for Kenosha as well, so you know.
Oh,
it's,
well, we do have to pay that off.
yeah.
You should
it's,
see my Kenosha fund in Derail Valley is a problem.
So if you wreck a company locomotive, other than the fact that you're probably fired, the company's gonna have to eat the cost of that, right? Like they can't possibly charge you for the price of the locomotive.
Pretty much. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like an actual locomotive, there's no way one person can pay for one, really. Not
Like they're
anyone who's
millions of
like
dollars or something?
Oh
or?
yeah, they're millions and millions of dollars these days. I mean, shoot, 491 when it was built in 1928 was something like $180,000, I want to say, in 1928 dollars.
Yeah,
so it's like
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of moolah. So if you wrecked one, I mean, yeah, not a good day. But a lot of the railroads self-insure and then just deal with that. Like BNSF doesn't have insurance; they just insure themselves, which I don't know how that works. But
how do you insure yourself? It's
we're
just money
a
coming out of
giant
your own
company, and then we pay for it ourselves. .jpg. I don't know. I don't get it.
But then you're just like an insurance company is just somebody who like basically pays for your damages. If you're a company insuring yourself, you're paying for your damages.
You're just telling everyone, yes, we can pay for it. It's fine. I guess. I don't know.
That seems so weird.
It's strange.
All right, I don't know if I'm clear of that switch back there or not. I feel like I can go back a little bit more. I gotta get clear of this line so I can pull your engine through. That's the issue. All right, I think I'm good there.
All right, first cordwood's unloading. So I can hold 100 cordwood. And yeah, but we've got some iron here, so it'll burn through the iron because I think we have more than 100 cordwood with 18 cars, don't we?
I don't know. What's 18 times 8? More
Lots.
than 100.
Lots.
Yeah, more than 100. It's 144, I think, right?
80 is 10, and then 8 times 8 is 60. Yeah, 144. Yeah.
Oh man, look at the math.
Look at you doing math.
I know, right? Look at that.
You know why I went to engineering school?
Not to do math?
Precisely.
Yeah, but you end up doing a lot of math.
You do end up doing a lot of math, but then you use Excel and you don't actually do the math.
Yeah, that's true. But we might as well talk about. I had another question too, because someone said they were interested in going into like I can't remember what type. They sent me an email and they were interested in going into some form of engineering. I think it was like aeronautics or something like that. And they haven't started college yet because you guys in America call it college for some reason. I don't know what the heck's going on.
Shrug, whatever.
Yeah, but anyway, so they haven't started yet, and they were wondering, like, you know, what's it like going in engineering, and like, what was your experiences in university and stuff?
It's a lot of work.
For me, yeah, the answer is it was a lot of work. I mean, it was a lot of work, and I remember I left high school with like a 92% average or something like that, at least in like the critical subjects, like in Canadian high school, you have to take French, and like I bombed French, you know, I just could not, like, it was just bad. So, like, I eventually dropped it because I was like, I'm not going to keep taking French. Like, it's just killing my average. But, like, yeah, take French and all that stuff. So, you know, but other than that, I was pulling good marks in the courses that university cared about, right? They were like, they cared about your physics, your chemistries, your math, your calculus, you know, your geometry and discrete, that kind of thing.
Right.
And they wanted to know. So I was pulling like 90s, no problem. And then I remember I went to university, and my average first term dropped from like a 90 to a low 70. And it was just like easy, like 20% just gone. Just because the difficulty just goes up that much. Like, it's just that hard. And it was just a lot of math, a lot of chemistry, a lot of physics, electrical engineering, which was terrible. You know, like, it's just a lot of work. And I remember in first year, the one prof, like our first prof, he told us, he's like, all right, you guys need to realize what the schedule of a student is like. And we were like, okay. And he's like, all right, so you have for every hour of lecture, you should spend an hour. By the way, a lecture. Oh,
right. Snooze fest.
We'll talk about that after in a sec. But anyway, he said for every hour of lecture, you need to do an hour of work outside of the lecture to, like, study the lecture material. And we were like, okay, no problem. That makes sense. And he's like, also, you're going to want to do an hour of homework every night to account for your hour of lecture material. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, and then on top of that, you want to get 8 hours of sleep. And then you want to make sure you eat 3 meals a day. And it's like, bro, I'm adding up all these times, and there are less than 24 hours
does
in
not
a day
work.
now.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't. So that's literally engineering in a nutshell. It's
Yeah.
like you have more stuff to do than you have time to do, and on top of that, you really just want to party. So, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. My experience was weird because I was a bad kid and I skipped a lot of my classes. Mom, Dad, don't listen to this.
Oh, I skipped a whole semester of classes because I was just like, I'm not going to class for this semester, and I got all the notes and still passed. But yeah,
right.
I skipped a whole semester of class because I was like, it was actually like end of second year, beginning of third year, where I was like, I'm just not going to go to class for 4 months, and I didn't because I was fed up with it. I still passed, and it was tough. And then after I barely passed, I was like, all right, I should probably go to some classes.
Yeah,
but
I had a couple of professors that were like, I had trouble understanding their accent and things, and it was like, this is not a good environment for me to be in. I'm having trouble focusing anyways.
Yeah.
I would rather be playing with choo-choo trains, so I went to work at the museum instead of going to class, and I had skipped a bunch of my classes, like
and then it's
my
funny how it
entire
all works
time.
out, right?
It's funny how it all works out, and I passed, and I ended up with a decent GPA at the end of my college career. But
okay, mine was a 76 average, which I don't know what that translates to in GPA. It's
so mine was a 3.405, which would be 6 points. Mine was an 84-ish.
Ooh, god damn,
Yeah,
you were way up there. I was not that smart.
I was apparently a smart kid somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah, I know. I did not do that. Yeah, I had a 76 average at the end of university, that was the end of it. So.
Yeah, I definitely should have had worse, but you know, it worked out. And you know, the hilarious thing is, I mean, it is all of the experience that I gained by not going to class and then doing all this other stuff has just made everything else work better for my now career. So like,
well, of
I don't
course,
know, it's
right?
strange. I had no idea at the time that this was going to be a thing, but here we are. And
I mean, technically,
yeah,
I could kind of argue the same thing. When I didn't go to class, I played a lot of video games, but like, I mean, it wasn't
that is your career
video
now,
games,
you know?
so it doesn't really work. But yeah, anyway, lectures, guys, lectures. If you've never been to a lecture before and you think your parents lecture you, a lecture is nothing like that. So a university lecture, I don't know how they were for you. For me, they were always either it was 3 hours a week for every class. So every class you're taking was 3 hours a week, but a lecture is only 50 minutes long. They give you 10 minutes in between the lectures to get from point A to point B. Sometimes you have lectures across campus, whatever, right? So every lecture, there's a 10-minute break. They always start, and then there's 50 minutes, and then that's it. Or you have some classes where it would be the full 3 hours in one lecture. So they would do an hour and a half, give you a 10-minute break, and then do the other hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, that
or
sounds
whatever.
awful.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. When you got those ones, they were usually the night lectures. They'd start at 6 and end at like 9. And that was like an evening lecture. But that was your whole class for the whole week for that one subject. So I had to take, I don't know about you, I took 6 subjects a semester.
Oh, good God. Okay.
Yeah, that was the requirement. So
this is why your grades were bad.
Well, that some semesters there were 5, but most semesters it was 6. I think there were 2 semesters out of the 8 that were 5 because it's 2 semesters a year, right?
Right.
Each semester's 4 months, so you have 4 months, 4 months, and then 4 months off. Because I was in the co-op program, I did first 8 months right away, and then I did 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 until I graduated. Where it'd be 4 months of going to school, 4 months of going to work, 4 months of going to school, vice versa. And you're working in some engineering-related industry. For me, it was
that's
all
cool.
automotive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was nice. You earn money, you get to pay off some of your schooling and stuff while you're working. And then obviously you have to go back to school for 4 months. However, when you're on your 4 months of work, you still have to write papers for the university. So you have to write a paper called a work term report where you had to do some kind of project within the company you were working for and then write a whole paper on it and why it was of value to the company and blah, blah, blah. It really sucked.
That's work with homework, which is the best
Right,
part of
and on
being out of
top of
college is
that-
no homework.
Yeah, and then we had to do some P-Eng like related like courses while we were on our work term. So we had to do these courses that dealt with like ethics and law and like, you know, the legalities of being an engineer and that kind of nonsense. Right?
That stuff's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to do that when we were on our work terms as well. But a lecture, back to what a lecture's like, okay? So if you've never been at a lecture's really simple. It is 50 minutes or an hour and a half or whatever of a prof just talking. They don't take questions. They don't listen to your questions. They don't care if you have questions. They don't even care if you can keep up.
Oh, thank God college in the States is not like this.
They talk. They write on the board. You take notes. Some profs will like occasionally stop and be like, "Does anybody have any questions?" But if it's a big question, they expect you to go to the TA, the teacher's assistant, which is like a fourth or an upper year student.
For context, Con, like what class sizes are you talking about here?
100 some students usually.
100 some. Okay.
Yeah, usually like 100 in a lecture hall was. I think my class started with 110, and by the time we were done fourth year, we were down to like 65.
That's
and that includes people who failed out and left, and then people who failed a year and got transferred down into our class, right?
Oh, so your whole graduating class in university was like 60 people?
65 for the mechanical engineers
Okay.
of that year. There were also the civils, the electricals, the
Right.
softwares, all the other engineers. But yeah, my class was 65 graduates.
Oh wow. Okay. That's interesting because my experience at a smaller engineering school was very different. I mean, you did have profs that would just kind of bulldoze through stuff, but most of them were actually like really good about taking questions and making sure people understood stuff. And we hardly ever had TAs unless it was like a big lecture. Like we had some big lecture halls where it was like 300 or 400 people for like a general engineering. Oh, this is chemistry 1. Okay. Or it's economics because you had to have that too or whatever. Okay, there's 500 people in that. But then when you started to get into the disciplinary stuff like mechanical engineering, it was like, okay, well maybe there's 50 people.
Yeah, okay,
big
so
class is 70 and
our disciplinary stuff. Yeah, so like our maths, our calculus, those would have big class sizes. When I took aerodynamics in fourth year, I took a course that specifically dealt with just aerodynamics and like looked at how planes fly, how you design a plane, and actually our final
Bernoulli's principle. Yeah.
Right, but our final project was actually to design a fictitious plane from the ground up, from start to finish, go through all the math, prove that it could fly and all this stuff. So we made like a private jet looking thing with the engines in the back, which is why the wings are further back because, center of gravity, blah, blah, all that nonsense. But anyway, so like in those classes, the more specialized ones, absolutely way less people. I took psych at some point because we have to take, because the university wants engineers to be well-rounded individuals, so they have to take social courses.
That is true everywhere because engineers.
So that's because apparently engineers are not well-rounded people, and having them take Psych 101 or philosophy will somehow make them become well-rounded rather than just being antisocial degenerates who you're not linked. You got to back up a little bit.
Oh,
You
okay.
didn't have a link on this.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so that was their brilliant thought, is that let's just pummel them with more courses because that will
solve the antisocial problem, is make sure they have no time for any social time.
Right, exactly. Let's just give them more anyway. So that was brilliant, but that's what that's what happened with us. So I took psych, I took philosophy, I took a couple courses called Design and Society, which was about designing things for the general consumer. And what you need to do, and I hated it because they were all stupid. It was a lot of very stupid people being very just really dumb. It was really dumb, and I just did not like it. It was bad. It was very bad. Anyway, that was my experience at university. It was fun. I loved it. Would never go back.
I loved mine. I hated mine. I mean, it was a lot of work. Like, school is a ton of work, and I
don't
worked...
regret it. I should
Oh,
say
yeah,
I don't
for
regret
sure.
it.
For
There's
sure.
no regrets. Absolutely 100%. If I was reliving my life, I would go to university again. There's no argument about that. I think education is super important. I think it's good to get a post-secondary education. I think you learn a lot more in university than I ever learned in high school.
For sure. Absolutely.
I don't doubt that at all. However, it was a part of my life that I'm glad I'm done with.
Yeah. Like, the thing that's the killer is all of the extra assignments and homework and stuff and test studying. Like, that stuff's important and it really helps you learn. But
university exams are just brutal.
Those are brutal, and you have to prep so much time for them, and it makes your home space, unless you choose to do all your studying and stuff in like a library or whatever around school, which I couldn't stand doing personally.
I did that. I was one of those kids where I found it was easier to get out of my house and go study at school rather than study.
That keeps your house like your safe space, or your like, this is my relaxation
just keeps
space.
The disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And now, of course, my office is also my playground, which is also I do everything at my computer. So now I just have no disconnect between work, which is it's good in some senses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes if you're like, late at night, you find inspiration for something. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna go do that right now because I can. So.
Yeah, no, I could never do that. Like, I needed to be at my own comfort space, like at home, to be studying or working on homework and like having music and being in my own place. So like, for me, it was like, okay, well, you always had work at home. You always had more homework. You always had more studying. And it felt like there was no end, and there was never like a release or like a way to kick back and like relax after everything, because it's like, okay, well, what's next? Well, I'm gonna go work and get dirty and fix a steam choo-choo for 8 hours, and then I have to do some homework, and good God, I have pictures of me studying in the cab of the 491 for an exam during Polar Express, like sitting there with a greasy notebook with differential equations, on it or whatever.
Yeah.
And like,
which is so dude, I remember like, it's funny when you're in university, like when I was in the middle of my university, like beginning of fourth year is when I think I hit my prime. Like that's when fourth year engineering is when you get to take all the cool courses.
Yeah.
Everything
So
prior
much
to
stuff.
fourth year is like, it's mandatory. It's like mandatory this, mandatory that, whatever. But once you get to fourth year, they're like, all right, take whatever you want and whatever's like interesting to you. And you can do that. And it was sweet. And like, that's when I feel like I was in my prime. Like you could throw any equation in front of me and I would solve it. Like I would know how to solve it. I could figure out how to solve it. And now I look at differential equations and I'm like, bro, what?
I don't even remember.
I don't even remember any of this stuff. Like it's just, if you don't use it, that's it. It's the end of it.
Yes and no. I was surprised for me personally, because in the United States we have professional engineering certifications. Which,
yeah, we have that too.
Which a lot of people don't need. Like, I'm not a professional engineer. I have a couple friends that are working on getting their PE. Good luck to Leighton, who's actually taking his test, I think, next week. But
we have. I have a buddy who's in my class in engineering. He's a professional engineer now. I never went through the process to get certified.
Right. It's a lot. So for engineers in the United States, you take a fundamentals of engineering exam, usually right after college. You take...
Are those not...
I don't know. Did those not do that?
I think they went in. I don't know. The cordwood pile number went up. I think
okay, that was strange.
They landed on the stairs there. That was weird.
You have fundamentals of engineering. Usually you take it after college, and it's about stuff you learn in college. And then you have to get like 8 years of experience total, which 4 of which can be your education. So you really need like...
so in Canada, it's 5 years experience.
Oh, weird. It's the little differences.
But it's 5 years working for a professional engineer.
Yes.
Your education doesn't count. You have to be working under a PEng to get your PEng.
Yeah, and the funny thing with the States is like you can just kind of argue your experience, so you don't necessarily need to be under...
generally speaking, in Canada, it's like you just need a PEng to sign off to be like, hey,
right.
you did it.
You did numbers,
stuff. Yeah, as long as the numbers line up, like you can't be like, I graduated in 2010 and I got my PEng in 2011. They'll be like, dude,
no,
you can't.
Yeah, that's not how that works. But yeah, so like that's how it goes in the States. Then you take a professional engineering exam. There you go. Well, I out of college got hired by BNSF and was like, oh, I'm going to be a hotshot railroad manager, and I'm going to be working for the railroad and go be a bigwig. I don't need to be engineer anything because I'm just going to be cool in management. And that lasted for 3 years, and then I said, no, night shift and being middle management at the railroad is awful, and so I left. And then I got an engineering job, and then they were like really hot on people getting professional engineering licenses and whatever, and so I finally took the fundamentals of engineering exam 5 years after I graduated college.
Right.
And I did not study. I realized that it had a PDF searchable equation sheet, and so I was like, you know what? We might as well just see what happens. Why spend all this effort when I have no time anyways to try and do this and see what happens? And I didn't study, and I passed the FE exam, which they always you have to study so much and all. I remember it a surprising amount after 5 years.
Canada, it's interesting. The professional engineers exam, from what my buddy has told me, is and from what all the profs and stuff told me, it's not so much equations and math. It's actually mostly law and ethics.
Yeah, that's the professional engineers exam, which is different. We have the same thing. Like it's more about this is what you actually do. Like this is what you're doing as an engineer. These are the things to look out for. Like this is what will get you in trouble, or this is what will cause a disaster if you don't take care of this. Like
exactly.
They're more concerned about that than the math.
Too. And it's like, you can't kill 5 people just because it makes you money.
Right? Yeah, the little things like that.
It was interesting though. I worked in automotive right out of university, so I didn't need my PEng for anything. There was actually only 1 or 2 PEngs in the whole building.
You really the professional engineer thing is usually for civil engineers and people working in government and people working in
signing drawings.
Yes,
is what it is. If you need to sign off on a drawing to say this drawing is safe to produce, then you have to be a professional engineer. And that is literally all it is. So it's like if you want to build a new robot, great. You got to be a PEng. You got to sign off and say this robot is going to work. It's not going to explode, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. But me, I'm the guy programming the robot on the far end. I don't need to do anything to tell you how I'm going to program the robot. It doesn't matter.
Right. You're just a guy. Like I did vital train control design for Sound Transit. I did safety, signal design, speeds, all this stuff. And everything ultimately got signed off by one of my bosses who was a PE. But they would come to me and go, you're the SME on this. I don't have the the breadth of knowledge on this that you do. You've checked everything and he trusted me and all that stuff. Like you have that working relationship.
At the end of the day, it's his license that is on the line if what you design kills people.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is the thing. Like if you design a bridge, that bridge collapses and your boss signed off on it, you're going to get fired for sure, but he's also going to lose his professional license because he didn't verify that what you were doing.
Precisely.
So it's kind of like being a doctor, but
it's like a really important working relationship where you got to trust the people that you have and the experience that they have and their ethics and their understanding of what you're working on. And that, welcome to engineering. This is the admin side of engineering. That's not the fun nuts, bolts, torques.
Yeah,
drawings.
I never went through that process, and I maybe should have, but at the end of the day, it doesn't affect my day to day now.
Right, same.
But you can probably just actually I'll just disconnect you. These will probably kick.
Oh yeah, just feel free.
We can just pull the siding out. Here we go. Just back class 48 up to wherever. Perfect. Wonderful.
I'll just stick it
Wunderbar, as they say in some parts of the world.
Wunderbar. Yes. Go park in here. I had fun in college, man. Overall,
long story short, I had fun. I don't regret it. I would do it again.
Lectures are hard. Homework's hard. Exams hard.
It's going to be easy. Nothing in life comes easy. And
this is very true.
Engineering is one of those things that definitely does not come easy.
The one thing that I do miss, I think the most, is the camaraderie of knowing that you and all your friends who are working in college together, you're all going through the same pain, you're all doing the same stuff, and study sessions
or equally. And there's always one kid who has no life, who studies like crazy, and pulls 100% on everything to destroy the bell curve because he's a dink.
Right, and that guy.
You all want to beat him up with that scene where they take the soap and they put it in the socks. There's always a kid that you want to do that to.
Right.
So he doesn't destroy the bell curve
because a lot of classes they'll curve the class if the best score on the test was an 80. Oh god, I just kicked. You didn't hook these up. Con!
Oh, I didn't hook those together. No.
I just kicked the Mosca into the first car and put it in the dirt.
Oh, my bad.
That's fine.
I was just going through and turning off all the breaks because these had breaks set. But
Yeah.
there's the profs, like if the prof puts out an exam and then the exam, like usually university profs were kind of like, they'd be like, all right, class, we're going to spend a month studying Pluto, the planet Pluto. And you're like, cool. And you'd be like, awesome. And he's like, all right, we got the midterm exam coming up. Get ready for the midterm. It's on everything you've learned in class so far. And we're like, all right, great, no problem. Then the first question is, what's the radius of Saturn? And you're like, what?
This isn't Pluto.
We've been studying Pluto for a month. And he's like, no, man, what's the radius of... And that's literally engineering exams in a nutshell for us.
So,
it was like,
I had
okay.
I had some like that. I had some profs that were great. Like it just depended that on the style. There were plenty of people that tried to do that sort of thing. That's like, okay, well, I'm gonna try and get you to understand the context and stretch your brain and do that. And that those tests were awful.
And then the class is like a 30% average. And then he's like, well, we better curve that up so it doesn't look like I made everybody fail on purpose.
My favorite. I have a favorite professor from college, and I still talk to him, Dr. Amaro. If you're out there, I doubt you watch my YouTube, but anyway. He had the best setup for exams and stuff where he would give you the boundary conditions of what was going to be on the test. And he would be like, it is open everything. Bring your damn cell phone if you want. Like, go for it. Figure it out. You will not have the time if you do not know this stuff. I'm going to ask you so many questions.
I had a few profs that did that too, and that was nice because it was like, okay, and that's more realistic to how it is in real world because
you got to get your stuff done, right?
You have resources, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I had a few profs like that. I hated the profs where everything was memorized because it's just not realistic.
Right.
They did happen though, where we'd have profs where it's like, you need to memorize all these complicated equations.
Every math test I had at Mines, every math test, we were not allowed to have a calculator.
Yeah, we had the same thing.
Yeah,
you
so
solved
it's like
it to the point where you'd need a calculator.
Oh, no, you'd have to just solve it. And they would try to make the numbers work out somewhat easily so that you could just do it. But I will never forget, like, the vibe of math at Mines was we had this great... I loved a ton of my professors I actually really had fun times with. But fun professor in doing Calculus 3. So we're talking about, like, surfaces and integrating surfaces and all that sort of fun stuff. And we all, we're in Honors Calc 3 and we're doing this test and whatever, and he's reviewing the test with everyone, and he goes, there are 75 of you in this class, and all 75 of you did the calculus right, but only 3 of you did the algebra right. Yeah, and it was like
kind of how it goes.
Divide by 5 and add 2. Like, it was that easy, and every single, almost everyone screwed it up.
In most of my math-based exams, they left everything as variables, and you had to solve the equation to the variable.
Oh, God.
So if they had an equation that was like, like, for example, we had one where it was like, there's a piece of steel that's being bent, and there's a cable suspending the steel. I always remember this question because it was such a freaking nightmare. But they had a steel beam that was rigidly attached to a wall, right? Like 90 degrees coming out of the wall. And then the steel beam attached to the wall has a steel cable holding it up with some tensile strength, like mu, as they would call it, like the Greek letter mu, right?
Right, yeah.
And then they'd be like, all right, so there's tensile strength, and then on top of that, the whole thing is supported by an aluminum block underneath, and I apply a force F to the end. Tell me the displacement of the aluminum block.
What's the
based
deflection?
On all these different variables. So it's like, okay, so you'd have to have the tensile strength of the steel as a variable. You'd have to have the steel beam's tensile strength as a variable. The strength of, like, the modulus of elasticity of all these things is a variable. The aluminum compression is a variable. And then the force F is a variable. And then you'd say, okay, displacement D is equal to some monstrously long equation that has all this different crap in it.
The displacement equation already has a bunch of junk in it. Like,
right.
As you're talking,
so
like,
Yeah, and then, or you'd get a question. We had a question kind of like that where it's like he gave us a bridge with all these, like, a truss structure on a bridge, right? And he said, give me the equation for position on the bridge versus displacement, because the displacement changes as you move along the bridge, right? Like, if you actually think of a bridge as it would sag, where the supports are, the bridge is going to be higher up and it's going to sag between supports, right?
Yeah.
So he wanted an equation that would say, if I ask you for position X on the bridge, how much displacement D? So give me an equation where D equals some function of X with all the nonsense crap thrown in around.
Doing that solved algebraically with variables, like, that's just not cool, man. That ain't cool.
that was literally most of my university classes. And they were like, you don't need a calculator for it because you just got to solve for the equation, right?
Yeah. Good God. Yeah.
Have fun with that.
Yeah, no, I preferred it when you got to have like an answer and be like, okay, does this make any sense?
The answer
I
is
don't know.
3. Yeah.
Check
I remember, I don't know about you, but like we always, every time we would know, the nice thing about university is there's no arbitrary grading. Especially in engineering, maybe in like philosophy and stuff, it's a little more arbitrary because people can interpret your paper differently, whatever. But with like the mathematical courses in engineering, like aerodynamics, calculus, physics.
Math is math.
Math
Yes.
is math. You're either right or you're wrong. And it's very easy to calculate your average. So with every university course, they would give you a breakdown of the course percentage and the grades. And they would say, this is your grade. Your grade is made up of 10% assignments. Usually it was about 10% assignments for us, usually 30 to 40% for your midterm, and then 60 to 70% for your final, depending on, and that was it. So you could literally have a course where you don't show up at all. You show up for the midterm, you show up for the final, you still pass.
Right.
Which is how I passed some semesters. And
Yeah, been there, done that.
yeah, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I had a course, legal studies. It only had 100% final. I studied a week before the final, passed the whole course. That was it. Never did work throughout the semester. Anyway, kids, study hard. It's very important. But, long story short, every kid in our class would calculate their grade going into the exam and the minimum percentage they needed on the exam to pass
This is the
course.
classic thing. I
This is the classic.
cannot take this exam and still pass. I watched
Right.
somebody walk out after they saw the
Yeah,
test.
because you know you're gonna fail regardless. You just
Yeah.
it doesn't. Yeah, so like I would do that with every class. You'd be like, okay, I need a 60 on this exam to pass. I need just a 50. I need a 30. And like my final class at university, my absolute final class, I knew I had passed pretty much everything else up to that point. Like, I mean, unless I really didn't know an answer to a question, you could usually like you discuss with your classmates after each exam what the results were, what you got. You could generally know roughly how well you're gonna do on an exam based on talking to people and stuff.
Right.
And what answers they got and that sort of thing. So I knew I was going to pass university, you know, this lengthy 5-year period of my life, because a co-op program is 5 years instead of 4, even though it's a 4-year education.
Right.
So I knew that I was done. And I get to my last course was CAD. It was on computer-aided design, right? And more specifically, it was on the math behind CAD programs, how CAD programs calculate the stuff they do.
Why? Oh man. Okay.
Yeah, it was like if you wanted to design your own CAD program, this is all the stuff you need to go. I'm slowing down so you can.
Yeah, I'm running.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was that course, and the exam was 6 questions long, or 7 questions, I think, something like that. That was it. That was the whole exam, and I knew I needed like a 30% of this exam to pass. And I knew I had gotten the first 5 questions right, or like 80% right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm like, these are gonna be good enough. I'll probably get 80% on the first half of the exam, whatever. But I knew I'm in the right ballpark. The last 2 questions were like a nightmare. Like I don't even, no idea what the heck was going on. It was like the last question I remember, which is like it was ridiculous. It was like there were 2 lines and a circle and another circle on top of that circle, and the 2 lines were intersecting each other at some base point below the circle, and it was like derive the equation for the radius of the circle based on the 2 functions of the lines and blah blah. And it was just this nightmare, like nonsense algebra thing. And I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna do this. So I literally, for the last question, I just answered, I graduated, I'm done, I'm not answering this question.
D is
And
for done. Goodbye.
I did it my exam and I left, and that was it. And you know, obviously I got a 0 on the last question, but I was
But
like,
that
there's
was
no
good
way.
enough. Yeah.
I know I was good enough, right? And I
Remember,
always
kids.
remember that.
In college, D is for done, C is for complete. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So
And a 51 is a pass, so you know that's all you need.
my favorite stupid thing about college is that my final exam, my final project for advanced machine design, is posted on my YouTube. It is an old
nice.
video on my channel. I had been having a bad semester. Things were strange in the family, and there was like emotional drama and stuff going on. And favorite professor, once again, was also having a really tough time, and like everyone was like burnt out. It was the last semester at college, and we had had a bro moment over Led Zeppelin several times over at this point. We're just both Led Zeppelin fans, like ridiculously so.
Why am I not surprised that
Right.
you're that? Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
man,
sense.
dad rock,
Yeah.
dad rock all the way. Anyway,
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I just like I remembered talking to him like on one of the last classes, and I was like, dude, I do not have the bandwidth to try and do your ridiculous final project, because he Like, he would give projects to us from his career that were insane for us to try and solve in this class. Like,
and then he would take the ones that solved it and use them for his career.
Well, so he'd already done it. Like, he'd already been there, done that. He was just a teacher now.
Another switch.
So it was just another switch. It was just a thing of like, okay, I'm trying to teach you. Like, he worked for a design build shop that had to build a 30-meter diameter base for a telescope, and it had to have no change in deflection more than 5/1000ths of an inch across that 30 meters. And he told us, okay,
6 million billion miles away. Little
exactly. It's
different.
Gotta be perfect because it's this huge telescope. And he was like, okay, tell me how you would design this and build it and fabricate it and transport it and install it while maintaining that 5/1000ths of clearance. Give you the whole thing. Like, he would do that sort of stuff, and it's like, this is a really great engineering problem. But anyway,
outsource the job.
Right. This is challenging. No, so it was super fun, but they were huge, really hard, long problems to try and figure out. And so I told him, I was like, dude, I really can't even right now. I've had stuff going on, and stuff sucks right now. And so he was like, that's fine. Like, I get it. Your final can be cover with a whole band, do a video cover of a Led Zeppelin song. I asked him if I could do that for him, and he said, yes, make it 10 Years Gone and you're done. So on my channel from 2017 is a cover of 10 Years Gone, and that was my final exam for advanced machine design in college.
I remember my final project in this CAD course, we had to design something in SolidWorks, which is like a 3D CAD program.
SolidWorks
and it was
is so much fun.
It was a really simple project. It said you can design anything you want. Anything you want, doesn't matter. The requirements were you had to have at least 5 unique parts that moved together in some way. Because the biggest thing of SolidWorks... assemblies. And the biggest thing with SolidWorks is you could make parts move together with different design constraints, and SolidWorks will automatically calculate tolerances where parts would hit each other, where they wouldn't, etc. And so the idea was design something that had 5 moving parts, like 5 parts minimum that interacted in some way. So like one of the kids, for example, made one of those clicky pens. You have a clicky pen.
Oh, right.
And whenever you click it, the ball comes out, and then you click it again, the ball comes in. That actually works by rotating a little ratchet inside of it, believe it or not.
I've taken apart many a clicky pen.
It's a little plastic ratchet, but that's how that works, and so he designed one of those, etc. I made a 4-cylinder 3200cc displacement engine with dual overhead cams and a timing belt.
All right, flexing, bro.
That had 396 parts and like 40-something unique ones.
You were just having fun in SolidWorks and just went overboard.
I spent 60 hours designing this entire thing and building it. And then I was on my old laptop. It took forever to render. I have the hard drives from my old laptop. I should dig one of them out, and it's probably on one of those old hard drives. I'd have to hook it up to something at some point with a SATA port and whatever. But I only got a 99.8 on the project, and I can't remember.
I would be
there was some stupid mad. There was like some spelling mistake in the paper because you had to like write a paper with it, right? Like everything is writing a paper. And
I would be so mad.
It was some stupid reason that a spelling mistake or something wasn't formatted right. It had nothing to do with the project, right? But I just laughed because it was like the requirement was 5 parts, and I was like, yeah. So I made something with like almost 500.
Several hundred, yeah.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It worked. There were nothing had interactions. The tolerance on the cylinders with like the rings and stuff was like thousandths of an inch. Everything moved precisely.
Perfect.
Cams moved properly. They had the followers, and it was awesome.
So I think one of my favorite things I ever got to do with CAD, with SolidWorks, and engineering was, shocker, related to steam trains. So
I'm surprised.
Surprised, right? So
491. Surprised that what I wanted to do worked with automotive as well. Like it's crazy.
So 491, when we were working on the restoration back in the day, putting her back into service, the suspension, which we call spring rigging for steam engines, but anyway, was just absolute toast. Totally worn out, ruined, destroyed. All of the pins were garbage. All of the bushings were egg-shaped. Everything was ruined. So we had to press out all these old ruined bushings, machine new bushings, and machine new fits for new bushings, and install all that stuff. And we had one dead block, which is a cast piece that basically takes a pin from one of the spring hangers to transmit forces from the frame through the dead block to the pin to ultimately do a spring hanger and everything. And it had egg-shaped the hole so bad that it was going from like originally an inch or inch and a half wall thickness to like 3/8 or half-inch wall thickness at the thinnest spot if we perfectly cleaned it up. And so we're looking at this and it's like, we don't know if we can clean this. Like, we don't know if it'll function. We just don't know. Is there enough meat there? And we weren't sure if we were going to use it. We didn't have any replacements, so it was going to be, well, we're going to have to cast new ones, and it's going to be this whole thing. And it was like, well, wait, I can calculate the weight that's going to be loaded on this based on the weight of the axles and the locomotive and all this stuff, and I can build the part and then stress it in SolidWorks. And so I did. So I designed the part, modeled it accurately, and then I put the boundary conditions on it like it would have, and I put the stress on it and found that it still had a solid safety factor even with the thinner wall thickness, and it was going to work. And it's like, oh, well, we weren't even sure at all, but it's actually got like a safety factor of 2 or whatever, and it's like, okay, it'll be great. So I got to do engineering analysis on a 1928 part that needed to be rebuilt. Go ahead and bring them forwards there, Con. We're aligned for the hump. I got to do that engineering analysis and make sure that this part was going to be safe, and then I got to machine the part to spec. And that was my proudest machining accomplishment as an apprentice machinist, which I really still am, but anyway, was I had to take as little of that meat off as possible to save as much thickness as possible. And so I'm cutting an egg-shaped hole with a boring bar, basically, going around doing pass, and it's cutting a quarter of the hole, a third of the hole, half the hole. And finally, on my last full thickness cut before the finish cut, it cut a full circle, doing a 20,000ths cut. That was the only time it cut the full circle, was right at the end. So I took just the cutest little bit of meat.
Yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of machining in university and stuff too, and like aluminum mainly because it was just, whatever, CNC and all that, and milling machines and lathe stuff. I made a hub for my unicycle on the lathe.
Nice.
I never put it on my unicycle because I realized a fundamental mistake. I made holes for the spokes, but believe it or not, on the unicycle tire or on a bike tire, the holes on one side are offset by a few degrees from the holes on the other side of the hub. So
yeah.
I didn't clue into that until after I machined the whole part and realized that my holes are not lined up because the spokes are the same length, but like they have to go different distances. So so that was that. That was kind of fun.
That was fun.
But like I whenever you're machining something, the last pass is like your finishing pass, and it's always the thinnest little slice of material, and you don't really know what the part is until that last pass goes, but it has to be just this microscopically thin slice of material to give you that smooth looking polished finish, but also like remove, because you're just spraying oil everywhere. You want to put the least amount of force on the bit to not accidentally over shear the part that you're trying to slice off of it.
Yeah, right? Depending on what material and feed the speed, lots of things. True. Yes, but the interesting thing with the one that I'm talking about though is that it started as like an amoeba shaped egg weird hole where you couldn't measure the center. There was no way to reason out where the center was because it was so amorphous from being beat to death for so many years. And so I managed to approximate the center the best I could, do some math, figure it out, start it, and only just before the finish cut did it actually cut a complete circle. Like that was the fun piece for me, and that was some of my favorite thing because it was the bridging together of engineering education, the background of real hardcore engineering, doing stress analysis, doing all that stuff, railroad stuff, and machining and putting parts together back in service on a thing. So it's like, this is the culmination of everything that I want to do, and I got to that. Yeah, it was one of my favorite things.
I think this lane could hold 20 cars.
It looks like it.
And then a little less on each other lane. But there we go. We're back. It was a little... We talked for like an hour about engineering.
We did. I hope people enjoyed that. That was we had fun at least.
It's kind of like... It's one of those like... I feel like the grandpa moments, where you're like sitting back like, back in my day.
Back in my day, college was so long ago, he said.
Yeah, it really was. But it was honestly... It's such a wonderful part of my life. and you know, it's just, and like thinking about all the design and stuff, and I do, and like, you know, I miss it to some sense. I don't miss it for other reasons. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where I think if anyone's truly passionate about it, they should definitely follow that and definitely do it. If you really want to become an engineer, like absolutely, you have to have passion if you want to do it. Nothing else will keep you motivated if you do not have passion.
Don't go into engineering, or like don't go into any field unless you're really interested in it, because it's like,
don't think that you're gonna go into engineering and be some loaded billionaire. Like that doesn't
do it because you want to. Yeah.
Do it because you want to do that, because it's just it's fun, and you'll live comfortably as an engineer. I had no issues with money when I was an engineer, but you know, you're not a loaded multi-millionaire, and it's a lot of work, and you have to be passionate about the work in order to do it. And I've said this since day one: engineers make the world go round. I don't really care what any of you think about that. If you don't think engineers make the world go round, then I would love to figure out like what house you live in, what car you drive, what phone you use, what computer you use.
And then prove you wrong.
Are you connected to, how are you watching this video? Are you on the internet? All these things are engineering marvels that some brilliant person had to figure out. So yeah,
definitely.
engineering is really, I mean, engineers and farmers, man. Without farmers, we'd be screwed too.
There's role. I mean, everyone has their role, right? But yeah, engineers. That's our passion. That's what we enjoy, and that's our piece of it. So.
And now Heist and I don't do any of that anymore.
Well, I mean, here and there,
we're useless. We're turds.
That's fine.
At this point. So you know, it is.
I just can't believe we talked about engineering college for like an hour, and I didn't bring up a kiddie pool full of beer. But again, anyways, maybe next time.
No, dude, I got other stories like that. If you're talking about kiddie, we'll have the comments ask if you want kiddie pool full of beer. I got one, which is pancake keggers. Pancake keggers. Yes, really.
Keggers? Okay.
Yeah.
I had the entire city of Golden's police department show up at my house to kick my band out. That's fine.
Oh yeah. Well,
more good stories.
Yeah. Well, some of my classmates stole a goat from a farm, so that's a
vibe. There's things that happen in college.
There's a reason that scavenger hunts are no longer allowed at our university, at the university I went to anymore.
That is spectacular. Yeah. Maybe. Ask your questions, and maybe we'll get into stories that we can maybe tell on YouTube. Maybe next time, maybe. He said.
We'll have to make sure we do them later in the episode so we can.
Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.